and started adding electrical cables to houses so that they could have light bulbs. He had to do a lot of work. Yeah, he was digging up roads and putting in pipes and putting in stuff so that he could, have these light bulbs in houses. And everyone was like, well, I've got candles. Do I really need all of this work just for this? But as soon as they had that, and as soon as they had the light switch, so many more things popped out. Yeah, because now you could do lots of things. It's like, oh, maybe I can have a toaster. Maybe I can have an oven. Maybe I can have a telephone. Maybe I can have loads of things. Yeah. And so just, at the time, nobody knew what they were going to use it for. It's just like light bulbs. All right, instead of candles. It's interesting, but I don't know if it's a killer case. I mean, it happens to be a very good use case, frankly. But then all these other use cases popped out of it. And I don't know what those will be, having a blockchain embedded on an edge device. But you can imagine it's going to be useful. Yeah, it's going to give you a power that you didn't have before. People are going to come up with ways of using this, in ways that they hadn't thought about using it just with information. And then, and then we were discussing this stuff and I was saying this, and, there are some, the world is in a sort of funny place at the moment. There's a lot of war going on, and there's a lot of military stuff going on and all of this. And I mean, we had a discussion about the ethics and morals of that. And again, I'm apolitical, and I try not to get involved in any of that. This is purely a technical, scientific experiment. This is where I am aiming for this. I don't want, what are the use cases? But if you have a blockchain, you have a messaging system that cannot be stopped. Yeah, because on the blockchain you can't censor transactions. That's the whole point. Yeah. Whereas when you have a normal network, which is like a normal mesh network, this was the conversation I was having with him. I can flood the network with messages and I can blow it up. Yeah. I can send valid messages. I can DDoS the network. Yeah. DOSing, you can probably stop. If one node starts misbehaving and sending thousands of messages, which everybody would forward on, but they're like, look, this node's obviously gone crazy. It's sending too many messages. Stop it. You could probably stop a DOS. Yeah. That's what cloud, so one computer trying to DOS your server, you can just ban that IP and say no probs. DDoS, impossible to stop, frankly. I don't know of another way of stopping DDoS, but you know what stops DDoS? Blockchains stop DDoS, because blockchains have a system where you pay more, you get up the list of the transactions. You burn more on Minima, you go up in the mempool and your transaction gets through. And it's not actually possible to DDoS a blockchain network. Not if it's written correctly. Yeah, not if you've got, there's clearly lots of work to be done on the client side for the networking to be efficient in what you're doing and blah, blah, blah. But this was the really beautiful thing, that when we were playing with Bitcoin back in the day, it's like, wow, I can't DDoS this network because I have to pay to have my transaction. And if you send a transaction that isn't in enough to get in the mempool, I don't forward it. And so only the transactions that actually pay enough get into the blocks, and so they're the ones that go. So you do have a DDoS resilient. This wouldn't be a maxima. This would be an actual transactional message. But if you had, for instance, some sort of code that you had to send to some sort of missile or device or whatever, and you wanted to activate that by sending it to then you could do it. Yeah, some encrypted message that had to get through. There was, I have to send this message to this drone. You can do it. And nobody can stop you from doing it as long as it's connected to the Minima network, which you don't get when you don't have the value transfer, when you don't have the blockchain. I can't do this on a normal mesh network that doesn't have the concept of what value is as opposed to what information is. You need both. And now that we have both, it just opens up a lot of avenues and a lot of things. And so that was really, really cool. And again, so we've got, so we've done this thing, and it's like, this is V1, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, this is not like finished, that's it, let's all go home, we've done it now. We've got the blueprint, but that's V1. You think NVIDIA, they made one, accelerator, and now it's like, that's that. Now they're working on the second accelerator. And actually, if anything, it opened up, so we know it works. We got the proof of concept. It's like, it's possible. Minimum small enough and compact enough to get it onto this. But this, we also, one of them, interestingly, one of them wrote an AI transpilation flow, which gave it the Minima Java code, and it came out with the Minima C++ code. ooh, and it was all done by AIs. He's a very smart coder as well, so he had to get involved with it. I'm not sure if he knew the Minima code base enough, so I don't know what would happen if I tried to do it. But anyway, he wrote a transpilation engine, which you gave it the Minima Java code, and it came out with a C++ Minima. And it worked. And it worked in private net. It worked in private networks. We had a full C++ version, which when you ran, you could run a private network, and you could run it in -test, and you could send yourself coins and do all of this, but it didn't work when you connected to mainnet. It's interesting. It was like, so you'd think it was an easy thing to fix, but we couldn't get it to work. And there was something about the way, and here we are with this hundreds of files of C++, which somehow when you run it, just the C++ worked, and I could do a test network, and I could do balance, and I could do send, and I could get address, and the hashing seemed correct, it even, did all of that. But whenever we tried to connect to mainnet, it sort of stopped working after 10 minutes. Something happened, and it wasn't, it's not an error that I can just go in and debug. It's just like it stopped working, it stopped accepting messages and saying, oh, no, that's an invalid message. And again, we've sort of hit this thing with AIs where we got somewhere. We got 90% of the way there to getting the C++ version out of this AI transpilation system, and then the last 10% just couldn't get it to work. And it's like, and now it's like, who's going to fix that? Get involved. Look at these 400 files and fix whatever's broken. I used to write games, blah blah blah, for Xbox and all that stuff. So I know C++, but not for like 25 years ago. I'm certainly not. I'm not great at it. Yeah, Java's my thing, really. But it's like, I suppose once you know one language, but I can't look at that C++ and find. I would if I could, but it's like, what do you do now? Do we go back and start again and try to do it? Do we give that project to a team of C++ coders and see if they can fix it? The reason the C++ is cool is because, unlike Java, which is ubiquitous and can run on anything. Yeah, you got your class file, you got your Java runtime, you can run it on anything, which is great. The C++, you have to compile for the board, for the chip, whatever, and you don't even really need so Java needs an operating system, it needs all of these extra, things that you need, so speed and memory management and all of these things. You pay, it's an acceptable price as far as I'm concerned. But if you want the rocket, if you want the super speed, you want the assembly running raw on a chip without an operating system, just like and then you can convert that, not even into an FP, that will give you much better memory management, which means it's much, and then it's much more efficient. And the speed increase, even when we ran it in the test, it wasn't that much faster. I think it was like 5 or 6 times faster, but it wasn't like, which is a lot, I think it was 300%, I can't remember. But it was faster, and it used up less memory. But more importantly, if you're going to be working with chips, and if you want to go ultimate tech, you need to compile the C++ version and put it on the hardware, the wetware, whatever, and it just runs, fast. So that's why they did it. That was very interesting to see. But we didn't quite get there in the end. There was like a 10% at the end that we couldn't do. And is it the case that the last 10% takes as long as the original 90%? I think so. Whenever you're doing a project and you're like, it's done, I've just got to do these few things, I spent 3 months on it, and then it takes you 3 months to do that last 10%. Yeah, that's fine. That's how it is. And I think that's where we got with this. If I'm honest, I think that what I think it needs to be is that Minima is just one code base, and you need to, somebody needs to extract the MMR and make a lib. Somebody so just that, the MMR, here's the MMR as a JUnit tested lib, convert that. We need to do KissVM, extract that, make a lib out of it. I give you the file, I give you the input, and I give you the transaction. I want you to return me true or false. That's what the lib should do, just KissVM. The TX power tree, the weighted ghost, the heaviest branch algorithm, rip that out, come up with a lib. You could basically compartmentalize Minima into its individual components and then convert each of those with a good unit testing system, and that would work if you are, that's, I think, the way it needs to go. Whereas just giving it the complete code, it should be, why can't I just do the code base if it can do this? Because you can debug it. Yeah, because we don't know where the error is now. Whereas if I had the different components and I had the unit test for each of the components, then I could really start to debug this thing, which is 90%, finding the bugs, fixing the bugs is really important. It's not something that's not an afterthought. And that's the way to do it, if you ask me. So we shall see how that goes. But it was wonderful to see in action. And as far as this Minima chip thing goes, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I'm going to give that whole project an A+. I absolutely loved it. It was great to do. It was great to see. So we did a video. I'll finish on a. So we did a video. So basically, we went out and they had a drone, and there was a guy who'd actually built it. And I was like, you know how to fly, yeah? And he's like, not really. And I was like, nah, look, come on, this is the money shot, man. Yeah, nobody cares about the screens and nobody cares about the code. They need to see a drone flying around doing stuff. Yeah, that's the exciting bit. And he was like, okay. And so he got it. And the first time, and the drone was there, and it was like, let's do it. We were all standing in the field and we're looking at it. And he takes off, and the drone's flying around, and it's good. And I think we did a transaction then, yeah, and it was fine, but just a little bit, like 3 or 4 meters off the ground, and then we came down, and it worked, and we were like, wow, that's very exciting. This is so wonderful. And then I'm sorry, I said, come on, man, we need to do this. I want Top Gun, yeah, I want to see flying around. Nobody wants to see that. They want to see it. We're in a park. Go for it, man. Let's get the film. We had the film crew there. Let's get the film crew and go for it, man. And he was like, okay. And then he did it, and he went, and he took off, and it was like, yeah, and then he went up, and it was high. It was like, I don't know, 20, 30 meters high, and it was flying, and I was like, this is it, this is the moment. Crash. broke the drone, snapped something, and everyone was like, And frankly, for the cherry on the cake, if it had just burst into flames, that would have been wonderful. But then I was like, look, did you get the video of the first one? And the film crew were like, we only got bits of it. And I was like, God, so I think we're going to cut the beginning bit where we take off with the flying of the second bit. And then we'll have the landing of the first bit. It wasn't the Minima bit that made it crash. He just didn't know how to fly it properly, because he'd not been out, it was windy. It was windy, but it was so fun. It was so, and it was like, okay, and then it was broken, and so we couldn't fly it again. It was like a small pause of 45 minutes where it wasn't raining, where we were doing it. So actually, it fitted in beautifully. It was like, right, it started drizzling. Pack it up, lads. We've got the video. We've done the test. Yeah, it did the drone sending thing, but we did crash the drone at the end, and that was actually the best bit of the whole day. That was really good. And I think we've got some documents and stuff, and we'll be showing that to you. I think at some point when we get it. Neo, hi. What?
Sorry, I just wanted to say that the whole story. That was hilarious because you were frame by frame. Your camera was so I just saw you like teleport like this. Boom. It was really comical. Seriously.
It was really exciting. It was like, this is exciting stuff. This is like proper science. Yeah. Explosions and stuff. Okay, so I'm about to do my Dex demo now. Yeah.
So yeah, I put my camera on because I don't know if you're gonna have issues trying to stream it. You might have to remove your camera to stream.
So let me have a little. So to finish the finale of this day. How am I doing? I'm doing all right. All right. Am I? I don't even know. Sorry. So that was the Minima chip. That was all the other stuff we talked about. Now. Dexy Wexy, let's talk Dex. So I've written a Dex, non-custodial, runs in the browser. And the way I sort of envisage this working, just to explain, it's non-custodial because there's no private keys held by, so there is a chat server. I've written a very simple Node.js chat server, which is why I really like it. And all it does is the communications between all the users that are on the Dex. So you can broadcast a message or you can send a message to a user. Basically, that's all you can do with the server. That's the Dex server bit. And everything else is done by you and the client. So you come along and you say, hey, I've got this many of this token and I'd like to sell them for this many of this token. I got 20 Paddy coin and I want to buy, and I'm selling them for 10 Minima. And you broadcast this to people. And obviously in the client, you aggregate all that data, display it to yourself in the way that Binance would show you all this data. And you can decide, you say, oh, look, I've got all these trades, I've got all these orders from an order book. I like this one. I'm going to buy that for that. And so you send that user a message. And so what you do is the user also, when you join the DEX, you say, here are my coins. There's a wallet just for the DEX. You say, here are the coins that I've got, and these are the order book that I've got, blah, blah, blah. And so what I can do, which is quite nice, is that I see the transaction, and I see the order that I want to do, the trade that I'm interested in. And I say, okay, if this is the trade that I want to do, so you can add trades and remove trades really quickly. Yeah, the order book is fast. Blah, 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 blah. And then you say, no, I like that one. I'm going to take it. And so what you do is you construct a transaction. You, the user who's about to do it, you say, look, I'm going to put in my coins. I'm going to put in your coins. I know the coin IDs and the values. I'm going to pay me this amount. I'm going to pay you that amount. Here's the transaction that basically does that entire trade. I'm going to sign it, and I'm going to send it to you. So it's not a valid transaction yet because it needs both of our signatures. There's my coins and your coins as inputs, and then it pays me and it pays you. And I send it to you. You then get the transaction with me saying, hey, I want to do this trade with you for this. You said you were up for it. What do you think? I then look at the transaction and then independently verify, go, so how much are you giving me? How much am I putting in? How much are you taking out? How much am I taking out? Okay, yes. Is that order in my order book? Yes. Okay, so only if you're happy with it, you say, okay, cool. You sign it and you post it. And that's the trade done. And so actually, and that process I'll show you is quite fast. Yeah, like a couple of seconds. And so we've got really fast order book. And then I can go, yeah, I want to do that trade. Send it to you, and you sign it and post it. And it's like, that happens in a couple of seconds. And it's done. And so, unlike, mini swap and all that, which was, quite slow, but because of the cross-chain nature of it, et cetera, it actually works really fast. And then there is a slightly slower execution. So let me just see. I'm going to try and get this to work now. So I've got it there. Share screen.
Disable your camera, buddy.
What's that? Sorry?
Disable your camera.
Make selection. Chrome. Yeah, I will. Which one is it? So I'm going to share the entire screen. Make selection. That one. Share. Oh, yeah, I can see the infinite redux. All right, can you see my DEX?
Yep.
Neo. No?
Yes, I can.
You can see the DEX. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh, yeah? So when I first turn up, there might be a page that points, but welcome, and your wallet details are stored somewhere. So I'm just going to have to type in a password, which is the password I store all my keys in. And then here we go. We've got a nice little DEX running here. I've got another user running and So there's me and this other guy using the system. Okay. And you've got the DEX at the top if we look. And then we've got the wallet. And so basically, I wish this is how I'd done the mini dApps actually. So the read mode and the write mode in the mini dApps. Yeah. You can either do read or you can do write mode. And write mode's so dangerous, yeah. And actually knocking up this wallet took about 2 days. Yeah, and I've just integrated a whole wallet into this web page. So I've got an address over here, I can send stuff and I see my balance here. And this is the wallet for the DEX. All of this, of course, is using Minimask. And please notice that I'm not logged into Minimask. This is just using basic Minimask Meg functionality. I'm not using the wallet for Minimask. I'm just using... do you see that when I pop it up like that? So this is the wallet for the DEX. Then I've got all of my orders, and then I've got my history page here. So let's just have a look here. Okay, so these are the tokens. Now, which tokens should the DEX support? There's lots of different ways of doing this. One of the things that I hope this will spur on is that it's fully hackable in terms of hacking it. You can add stuff or remove stuff or change stuff or skin it or do whatever you want. Yeah, this is all running on my client. This is just a website. It's all open source, blah, blah, blah. And so these are the tokens of all the wallets that are connected to this DEX. So when you connect to it, I say, look, here are my coins, here are my this, and any coins that get connected get a book. So you don't have to add them, because if you do start adding them, it's like, well, how long do they stay? What if you add a token that nobody wants? There's no orders. All of that takes resources, and that could mean that I have 10,000 tokens. So this was the simplest way I could think of a way of doing it. I just get all the tokens of all the people connected. Sorry, the price graph is broken. I was mucking about with that last night, late at night, and then I noticed at some point that everything was broken, and every time I tried to do a trade, it didn't work, and I was like, I throw it away, go back to main, and then I realized I was working in the main branch, and I was like, always do your dev work in separate branches, because then if all hell breaks loose and it doesn't work, you can revert back to the main branch. But last night it all broke, and anyway, so let's just do a trade and see how fast it is. All right, so I'm gonna buy this one, 2.4 AAA. So let me explain the order book, which is a little bit different actually, similar but a little bit different. You've got the number of orders at that price, so at this price, 2.4, sorry, currently there's only one order, I've only got one other user on there. The total amount and the maximum amount. And what that means is that I can, because if I have 10 people, clearly this has to be one transaction. Currently this has to be one transaction with one user. It could be different, you could change that, but at the moment the simple way is to say I can trade with one user. So even though there might be 10 people who are offering at the same price 10 amount of this token, so 100 of that token, you can't buy the 100 because that would require you to interact with 10 different users. So the maximum amount is the highest amount at that price for a given user. So for a given user, since I've only got one, these are the same, there's 8.8694 of AAA that you can buy. And that's true for the buys and the sells. And so when you're doing a transaction, it tries to find the single user, and if there's multiple users, it picks a random one that can offer you the amount you want at that price. So I go buy, and it goes, okay, you're about to do a market buy action. You're about to buy AAA for Minima. This is the price. The maximum amount you can have is this. So I can actually use this slider to decide how much I want to buy. So let's say I want to buy, a complicated amount, 0.8, and I'm like, okay, I want to do that. Confirm. Signing transaction, it sent it to the counterparty, trade success. Woo, that's the TX Power ID. And just to show you that that's run, let's just do a sell quickly to see if that works as well. Confirm, signing transaction, sending transaction to the counterparty, trade success. Woo. So I just did 2 trades there in about 2 seconds. So there was the buy that I did, and there was the sell that I did. And if I look in my history, I've got these, which way up are they? Buy, here they are. I've got these ordered the wrong way around, right? So I've got buy and I got sell, so they got added. And if I go back to my wallet, there they are. So we created transactions and we sent them. In fact, if I just go to history, I'll show you. So that's the TX Power ID, sell, So if I click that, what do you know? Minimask, my block explorer, there's the transaction. There's the transaction that was sent over the network when we did this. And if I go to my wallet, it shows that there's unconfirmed amounts. And so the wallet shows you available amount, which is what isn't in orders, the amount you actually have, and that's the unconfirmed amount. So if I go to DEX, for instance, and I say, so AAA, how much AAA do I have? I have like 36. So if I try to do a trade, so if I try to say, look, I want to sell 1,000 at 1, it'll say insufficient funds. You're trying to sell 1,000 AAA and you currently only have that much. Okay. So the book works out what you can and can't do. And I can't say I want to do a trade for this much when I don't have it. Same if I want to buy stuff. Let's go to bad boy. What's this? Let's buy that one. See how that works. Confirm, signing transaction, sending transaction, and trade success. Ooh. Pretty quick, frankly. Now, if you look at the wallet, what's interesting is I've got a certain amount of coins and I've actually added the split coin functionality there. So if I had 1 coin, I would only be able to do 1 transaction with that coin until it had reconfirmed and come back to me. But if you've got 10 coins, so let's say here, Paddy, I've only got 1 coin here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the coins. You will split your Paddy coins into 10 equal amounts. Okay, continue. All right. So it's split them. Funds split. Boom. So now it's waiting for the coins to come back to me. And when it does, I'll have 10 Paddy coins, which means I can do, well, depending on the size of the transaction, I can do, up to probably 4 or 5, I don't know, maybe 1 if it uses all of the coins. But if each transaction is less than the size of a single coin, then I can do 10 transactions immediately, with no delays whatsoever. It's quite nice how the price graphs move. Okay, so Paddy, I've got, these are the Paddy coins. So if I want to add an order, let's say I want to add 10 at a price of, I think they're going to be expensive, these. Price 10, sell. Right, missed. Insufficient funds, you're trying to sell Paddy. Oh no, because they haven't cleared in my wallet yet. No, okay, we're waiting for them to clear. Let's try something else. Bad boy, I've only got 1.12. Let's try that. Bad boy, amount 1, and I'm selling them for 0.01. Sell. Create order. Okay, ding. That appears here. You'll notice that appeared instantly here. It also appears instantly in everybody else's books. And that's because I'm using a WebSocket backend. So every time I do something, I basically broadcast the transaction to the rest of the people that are connected to my WebSocket. Just Node.js, WS, very simple stuff, and everybody gets it. And then if I want to cancel it, boom, it goes almost instantly. And yeah, you can't see the other one I've got. I've got another one running on the other window, and that's totally fine as well. Not now, my darling. So Dex wallet, all my orders, history, with all the TX powers that I've got. The cat's coming. And that's basically it, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, one second. I've got a cat that meows like a madman. Okay, so I'm actually going to call that a rather successful demo, and I'm now going to go back here and turn off the camera and turn on, turn off that, sorry, and turn on. Oh, and now, what's happened? Video chat isn't available. I've been, you can't see me because there's more than 25 people in here.
Yeah.
Right, so I can't actually activate my camera because there's too many people in the room.
Someone left.
Wait, I'm back.
There you go.
All right. Can you see me now?
Yep.
Okay, so that's the Dex. I need about another week just to explain one of the features that I think is quite cool about this. That's one Dex, and that'll be, Minima will be running a Dex. Just to clarify that the legal issues, I don't think there are any, because like I said, the guy who runs the server is not involved in any transactions. There's no private keys. There's nothing. You're just running a chat server. And then all the actual transactions are actually peer-to-peer. Me and the peer are the ones that sign the transactions, send the transactions, and do everything. So that's nice. That means you don't have to worry about that. So Minima runs one, yeah? And you can go there and you can trade your coins, and that's totally fine. But what is going to be much better, and what I hope people will do, is that if you have your own token for your project, you have a project and you've created a token on Minima and you have that, you can embed that Dex into your website. And I've got a JS file with some variables, and you can say, this is the only token that I want traded. So instead of getting a drop down, it'll just say, this is a Dex for, power tokens that are what we use to sell batteries or whatever it is. Yeah. And on your website, you can have a specific Dex that only trades that specific token. And, I'm going to try and see if I can squash all of this into some Docker image so you can just go run and it'll work. But otherwise, you just need to run the Node.js server, one line with very easy. And then you've got your totally independent Dex. Yeah, you're running it. You're running the Dex for your token, which is great because it means you don't have to worry about Minima Global going down or the website or overloading or, it's also much, faster. You don't, if there's 100,000 people, it won't work with 100,000 people if you ask. Well, maybe if I did some clever stuff, actually. But if there's like 1,000 people, that's not going to be as fast as if you have the 200 people that actually care about that token or the 50 people who care about that token trading it, going for it. So I really want people to embed that into their own websites if they have their own token, because that's what gives it the Dex. That's what gives it the decentralized bit, yeah? Yeah, we can have one version of this, and yes, you can all log into it and it does the thing and you can all do that. But what would be better is if you were all running your own, one for your own token. Yeah, that would be, that's the way to make it resilient. And just to explain, obviously, if I'm involved in the trade, I need to have the browser. I need to have that page open. Now, you don't have to be on that page. I have the other one on a separate. I've got 3 workspaces, and it's sitting over there. And because you're not logged into Minimask, it never logs you out. It's never an issue. It always has access to that. But your computer needs to be on. Yeah, your computer needs to be on. That page needs to be open, and then it trades. And if you turn it off, then your trades disappear. So when you connect, all your trades appear, all your order book appears. And when you disconnect, all your orders disappear, because obviously you're not there for me, you're not there to sign the transactions when I need you to sign them. I did think hard about whether I should now do a version that runs on a server, a command line version. But then I thought, who actually has? I mean, I have a server. Baz has a server, and maybe 2 other people I know have servers, but most people don't. And so I don't know whether that's the best use of my time. But currently, runs in Chrome with the Minimask, with the Minimask thingy, works fine. I've had it running for days, no problem. But your computer needs to be on. And I guess also that sort of brings up the interesting fact that, decentralization and resilience comes at a cost. Yeah. Is it as simple as logging into Binance and just stuffing your order on there and then disappearing, going on holiday and coming back and your order's being filled? No. But is it non-custodial? Yes. Is it more resilient? As in, can you take this system down once we release this code? No. There's nothing for nothing, but there is something here that you don't get when you use those centralized exchanges. So although clearly there is some friction, there is friction to using this as opposed to using Binance, there are some advantages to using it as well. I'd really like to get some. I hope somebody does a nice skin. That was my skin. That's not really my thing. I'm a function man, not a form man. But anyway, that's the DEX. And I think I'll be, with the new Minimask. Sorry, I found a few bugs in Minimask, so I know it's very alpha. I have said this. And one of the things I've noticed is that I've had to sort of edit some of the functions. Like when you send now, you can split coins, which I didn't have before. And so I've had to add a parameter, and I'm like, how would you get around, so how am I going to update this stuff without breaking everybody's current implementations? And do I just have a JSON object with parameters, which is what I kind of like? Yeah, I'm sort of thinking the functions should just accept the JSON, and the JSON should have the parameters, because then you can add parameters without changing the function. Yeah, and either you add the parameter, you can leave it blank, and then I'll assume the default value. But otherwise, if you put all the variables in, it's the first time I've really thought, damn, I've had to change the send function to add and split, and I'm not quite sure how to keep going with that. I mean, I know, but anyway, that's DEX. We'll be launching it. I mean, just to say, I think the code is available. I can't remember if it's a private repo, but anyway, it's going to be public source soon, and you can all muck about with it in a couple of weeks when we launch it. Neo.
Thank you, Paddy. That was great.
I think I've hit my. Just to say, are there any? I think at this point we should open up for questions if there's time.
Yeah, exactly. So there was already a question in regards to the DEX coming from Stables, and they're asking if you're thinking of adding perp, which would require an oracle simply.
Adding perps. So that's So first you need an oracle for a perp, as you say. So you need to know what the price is. And then really, I think the point about the perps is, though, isn't that for the margin? And so you can leverage and all of that stuff. So what I'm saying is, with this, you have a limit order book. So can you add that on top of a limit order book? So what, Neo, you asked me a very interesting thing earlier, and you said, is it possible to have an API where I can actually call this DEX with curl? Yeah, with another application that calls the DEX to do stuff, either to give me a listing of the orders and that. And it's like, that's totally possible. And I hadn't actually thought of that a lot, but that's a really good idea. Yeah, so it'd be possible to have /API, and in the API you can just curl in, because this is just a web, this is just a web page, so you can call it and it'll tell you stuff. Is it going to be possible? Well, yeah. So
they asked. They asked another question. They said, could the order book be a smart contract and each bid/ask be a token so that everything is fully on chain?
But do you want it fully on chain? You're not going to get the fast. So you can have a fully on chain DEX, but then you have slow order book. You have slow selection because we have lots of people trying to buy the same, and then you have slow execution. So absolutely, you can have it on chain, but it's slow. Whereas the point about this DEX is that you may have noticed it's pretty fast. Yeah, the order book is fast, executing a transaction is fast, fulfillment is slow. Yeah, so 2 out of 3 are fast on this, as good as anything else. I'm doing it with the same techniques that they would use, and that was really the point of this. You could have done an order where you could have done a DEX where each output was just, you can spend me if you send me this much. In fact, I think that is the demo that we have in the tutorial. In the tutorial we have a smart contract that says this is how to do it, and that's totally fine, and it could all work on chain, but it's slow. Because if you want to change your order, you have to do a transaction. You want to add an order, you have to do a transaction. Whereas this only does a transaction when you actually do a trade. So, yes, you can do it, but you have to pay, speed and time and et cetera. And this is the point. I don't think having the chat server in between is that big a deal. If you have lots of chat servers. Yeah, the point is what would be nice, I suppose, is if you had multiple chat servers for the same exchange, so that one could be taken down, and so if you were connected to multiple of these chat servers at the same time, and it just aggregated and filtered similar, the same trades were ignored. If one of them went down, the other two were there, it would still keep running. So yes, there is a server element to this, but it is an element that anybody can run, and you can connect to that, and then it works. So,
Okay.
which one?
Sorry, I've just been informed by Luke that the YouTube stream is going to end in 3 minutes because he has to go, but we can keep going since we're on the questions. And so there's been a question from Lewis C5. Which is actually a good one. I was going to ask you if there's a splitting and consolidation function, which you showed us the splitting function, but was there a consolidation function there?
So you can send coins, and it aggregates them into one coin. So if you use the send function, it just takes your coins and sends them as one coin to the address you say to send it to.
No, but I'm talking about the DEX. Sorry, I should have specified. So on the DEX, is there an option for you to consolidate the coins in your wallet?
What do you mean by that? Sorry.
Because you showed us that you could split the coins in the wallet.
Yeah.
On the DEX.
So why would you want to consolidate them and have one coin?
Well,
But
wouldn't you have?
But you want lots of coins so you can do loads of trades. You want lots of coins because then you can do multiple trades at the same time. If you only have one coin, then you can only do one trade with that coin before it comes back to you, and then you can do another trade. Whereas if you have 10 coins, I can do 10 trades at the same time. And then all 10 come back to me, and I can now go again. So you want multiple coins.
Yeah, that does make sense. Okay. And he had another question. Will the drop-down list with the tokens have like an icon for verified tokens and unverified tokens?
So you can change it in any way that you want. That's the simplest way that I could do it. But yeah, it'd be nice if you had the icon, and it'd be nice if it had the little tick and the web validate, and it'd be nice if you could click on it and show me more information. I agree, totally. All of that. Will somebody add features to this DEX? I'd like that. That's what I really want. I really want you all to make it your own. Yeah, this is just the base unit that does the sort of techie stuff, the Minima stuff, all of that stuff, and it basically works. Yeah, functionally, it's, once you understand it, it's not that complicated. It's pretty simple. But adding loads of stuff, like the history, just make it look infinitely nicer. Yes, show you the tokens nicely. Yeah, absolutely, totally possible to do all of that. But am I going to do it, or is somebody else going to do it? Is the real question.
Yeah, I mean, where ultimately Minima is going to sort of rework this DEX you've made, so it has a better skin.
You always say that, and then it's like we're changing it now. But anyway, we can spruce it. But what would be nice is if people made it their own. Yeah, you make.
So in the meantime, how do you know if you're trading an imitation or the real token?
Because it shows you the token ID. So you may have noticed in the market window, it shows you what the token ID is. I agree. I could come up with the same name token as you, but I can't have your token ID. That is unique to your token. So yeah, again, you need to be careful that some spammers might come along and say, "Oh, this is MXUSD." So this is also we don't have the stable coin yet, but there will be Minima stable coin on it as well. So that'll be the Minima DEX, hopefully, for US dollar. It's interesting, actually, because then you have to ask yourself, which pairs do I want? And so the way I've done it, which again is customizable, is I've said you get Minima against MXUSD, and then you get any token of any wallet connected against Minima. And if I'm completely honest, the reason I do that is because I want traffic through Minima. I could do all of them versus MXUSD, but then that sort of puts pressure on, there's other bottlenecks you have to think about. Whereas if you just make, you could do both, but then you could do against Minima against MXUSD, but then you break up the liquidity. Yeah, you want all of the tokens trading against the same pair. Customizable. You can do this however you want. So yeah.
Okay. Well, so just so everyone here is aware, this is the first time that I'm actually seeing this demo. So I have my own question, Paddy.
All right.
In regards